Hello, welcome to Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. I'm your host, Tabitha Ziegler.
Hi there, welcome to Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. My name is Ted, I am the producer of the podcast, and I'm popping in with just a quick introduction to this week's episode because it's a special one. We put Tabitha herself in the hot seat. Now, this is what we call a swap episode, a podcast swap, because Tabitha came on my podcast not too long ago. It's called The Multipod. And as we were planning that episode out, we realized this is a great opportunity, not just to profile her on my show, but to in turn introduce her a little bit more to her own audience, because we often don't know. We discover podcasts and the people behind them, and you kind of piece together their biography and their background, in bits and pieces over the course of many episodes. That's going to happen naturally, but we really wanted to be intentional with this particular episode to fill in some of those gaps, because there's a lot of things that you probably don't know about Tabitha, and I didn't know either. So I was very excited to have her on my show, where we really do get to know people's backstories and how they've gone through life and kind of the choices they've made, about careers and education and where to live and just how to live their life. My podcast, The Multipod, explores the lives of people who refuse to specialize, who really resist having to choose that one thing that they're supposed to do in life, especially when you're young, when you're like 18 or 20 years old, and you're told you've got to pick a career, you've got to choose a path and commit to that lane. Well, what if we have all kinds of things that we want to do? We have different interests, we have different curiosities, different kinds of jobs we want to try, places we want to live, different kinds of education maybe we want to pursue. It's quite hard to do that in a world of specialization. So that's what my podcast is about. Tabitha is a perfect example of someone who's lived their life that way. So you hear all about it here in this episode. And let me take a moment, too, to thank you very much for your support for this podcast. It's been quite an adventure since we launched it just a few months ago. We're really seeing some great interest in people taking to heart this message. It's so important to not just get the message out there about advocacy, but to demonstrate that there are communities, there are people who share the values and the struggles, and they can support each other, whether it's in Indiana or really anywhere across the United States or even beyond. And I'm coming to you from Canada, and we're certainly watching closely what's going on down there. So it's my honor to be a part of this podcast to help getting that message out. And in the meantime, I really hope you enjoy this episode. It's lots of fun, and you'll enjoy getting to know Tabitha that much better. All righty, welcome back, everybody. This is The Multipod. I am joined by my very good friend, Tabitha Ziegler, who's here today. We're going to chat about her story, her life journey, multipotentiality, her podcast, which I'm very pleased to be a part of, and get to know more about Tabitha. As often as it's come up a fair bit the last little while that she's someone that I know a lot of us, our listeners, know already. But, if you're meeting her for the first time, this is great. And even if you do know Tabitha a bit, we're going to fill in some of her life story. A lot of stuff I have questions about. I know a little bit, but I'd like to know more about, the things you've done. So what's interesting about this episode, we're recording this for the Multipod, but we're also going to post it on Tabitha's podcast, which is called Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. So Tabitha is going to take a second here and say hello to her audience as well, because they're going to be watching this too.
All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the podcast. And like Ted said, here I have the opportunity to be in the side bucket, in like the sidecar of his motorcycle, which normally I'm in the driver's seat. So that's going to be pretty cool. We're going to have an opportunity to get to know me a little bit better, and also for you guys to be introduced to Ted and what he does with his Multipotentialite podcast.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'm excited about this. And so as part of, we're kind of talking to two audiences here, which is cool. But therefore, I want to make sure that everyone understands what this concept of multipotentiality is. Now, you may know it in different terms. People say polymaths, and there's a whole bunch of different terms, octopus and stuff like that. Essentially, I always tell people, and I've been really living, understanding this concept for, at least 8 years now, something like that. And I tell people about it all the time. And I'll say, well, imagine, especially back to maybe the days when you're kind of in high school and getting into college and stuff, and people ask you, well, so what do you want to do with your life? And if your answer is that was like, I don't know, I want to do everything. I want to do this. I want to try that. Like, if you resist that kind of specialization and the pressure to choose that one thing, especially when you're young, but it really goes throughout your life, to choose that one thing. And then the notion that you're kind of stuck in that for, the rest of your life, and that's your identity. This is the type of stuff that multi-potentialites push back against. We don't want to be pigeonholed. We don't want to be known for that one thing. A lot of this, and I know a lot of what we'll talk about today, comes back to jobs and careers, but it's certainly not just that. It's different interests, it's different passions and hobbies, and going down rabbit holes and all that kind of stuff, and really embrace it. Multi-potentialites are the type of people that purposefully change career, not by accident. We want to try different things. So we change career very intentionally, or we get different degrees, multiple degrees, go back to school, often just for the sake of learning, right? Just for that experience. So, it's hard to do that in a world where you're supposed to specialize and choose and commit to that one thing. So that's the multi-potentialite background. That's what my podcast is about, the Multipod. And on my show, which has been around since 2018, the purpose of my podcast is really to get to know the guests, to get to know their journey and their life story and the things they're interested in. And also with a call to action too, which is that I really encourage the listeners, the viewers, to connect with the guest afterwards. If something that the guest says really speaks to you, something they're interested in, what they do for work or whatever it might be, they might have a business, it could be anything. But if something they say really speaks to the listener, then reach out and contact. And I try to say more than just, a like and a share. I mean, those things are nice, but write an email, right? Send a direct private message, like those kinds of things, and make that contact. So keep that in mind. We'll circle back to that towards the end. And in the meantime, let's get to know Tabitha, because, as I say, I'm excited. I know, a fair bit about you, but there's lots to fill in, and that's all part of the excitement. So where do you want to start? If you were, let's take it back to you. If you were, when you were, 18, 19, did you have a sense of like what you wanted to do with your life?
I always felt like I was a little bit of a different character, like straight out the gate. I always really I loved knowledge. I loved reading. I loved anything that I could get my hands on about different languages, different cultures, different people, different cuisine. And, knowledge, curiosity, and education were always encouraged in my family. I had a set of parents and, grandparents that were very much that type of, you need to go as far as you can, learn as much as you can. Everybody has something to teach you. It was encouraged to learn how to do things on your own.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I come from a family of multi-potentialites.
Cool.
And none of us were aware.
Yeah.
We weren't aware that that was a thing. And I just got introduced to the word whenever I was part of Location Indy, which is now ILC. And, people were talking about this conference they were going to and asking if I was going to go. And I was like, what conference? Where is it at? Tell me a little bit about it. They're like, well, it's for multi-potentialites. And I was like, what's that? And they're like, well, it's sort of a grab bag. And I was like, And then I started to have deeper conversations with people that self-identified as multi-potentialites. And I was like, I think I'm a part of this team.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about the Everything Conference, which there's been two, and the second one was in 2024 in August in Minneapolis. And I was lucky to go. I missed the first one, but I was able to go to that second one, which was amazing. We've talked about it lots here on the Multipod. I did a whole little mini series in audio form when I was there, and getting to meet all kinds of friends that I've known online, but I never met in person. So, again, a lot of our common connections. People who've been on this podcast. Marty was there, and John McKenzie, and a number of people. There's quite an overlap between a lot of these groups, which is nice. The Multipod is born out of the Puttyverse, which is another online community really expressly for multi-potentialites. It brings people together from all different walks of life all around the world. So a lot of them are there, and the Puttyverse and various blogs and other people have really expanded on this concept and helped to share it around. So it's great that, you didn't just hear about it from me, you heard about it from a lot of people, which is neat.
Yeah. Well, and I think naturally, I've just always gravitated towards people doing things, just action takers, doers. And, I probably wasn't aware that I was a doer, or not like that anyway. And then, I was just always actively searching. I was always trying to find my people, And, I never quite felt like I fit in. And then whenever I went to the location ND adult camp,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I found my people. This is amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that's where we met. We met in person. We met, this is rare. We met in
randomly
person before we met online,
mm-hmm.
which rarely happens these days. So that's nice. I like that. That's how things unfolded. So you grew up in Indiana.
Yep.
Rural Indiana, right? Farming
Very
country
rural.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Where did you go to university?
So I started out at University of Southern Indiana, and then I transferred up to Indiana State University. It's a little bit closer to my home. And I was able to drive because, I don't come from a rich family. And, luckily enough for me, my parents were able to help support my, higher education journey.
Yeah.
So I was thankful for that. And then whenever it came to a decision like, oh, should I stay in the dorm? Should I stay on campus, or can I save money for my parents by staying at home? It was a no-brainer for me. I was like, look, I'm thankful to go to school. They were, really focused on me doing well and finishing my degree. Of course, I also got a job because, I think growing up in the type of area that I did, it's sort of like, not only do you get your own spending money, but it's the least you can do for your parents, because especially if you come from a family where maybe you're the first college graduate. Like some of my aunts went to school or nurses, but I think I might have been the first person in my family, like of my age group, to actually get a 4-year degree. And that was really important for not just myself, but for my entire family.
Yeah, great. So what did you study?
Well, How
many times did you change programs?
Here we go. So at USI, I started out in advertising, and I found that really interesting. But I also really liked French, and I was, I majored in French all the way through high school. I participated in a study abroad program in high school. I knew I wanted to go back.
In France?
So pretty much from the time that I hit 16 or so, and I had that opportunity to go to France, I was hooked. And I was like, oh yeah, like I have to figure out a way to travel. And looking back, I think that was my main motivator for a lot of other decisions that I was making. It wasn't that I didn't like where I was from, but I was just so curious about the outside world. And it was very clear to me early on, like it is for many people from where I'm from, the only way you're getting out of here is if you're a really good student or you join the military. So I was entertaining both. I was like, hey, whatever way I can get myself out of here, if I make the grade, fine. But if not, and I not have to join the military, right? But just another way of seeing the world. And I had several of my family members, including, second, third cousins my age, that were joining. And actually, my high school was one of those places where all the military recruiters, they were coming to the high school, like pulling us out of class to have a chat with us. Wow. So they knew, like, oh, hey, this kid comes from a Marine family. This one's uncle was in the Army. This one was in the Navy, the Air Force, whatever. So they were like very actively recruiting us. And I was actually going to go, not just for that duty to serve your country, but also for the travel and the skill set and all. And my parents said, no, absolutely not. They're like, we want you to get your education.
Okay.
So,
was there a branch that you were going to choose for the military?
Well, I was getting actively pursued by the Marines because I had a grandfather that was in the Marines.
Huh. Wow.
So one of my grandfathers was in the Marines, one was in the Army, and one of my uncles was in the Air Force. And several of my cousins and my dad's cousins, like it's the whole gamut. Like there's some Navy, Marines, Army, Air Force.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if there was anybody in the Coast Guard. There might be, and I'm just not aware of it. But I come from one of those type of families where everybody gets together at the family reunion, and everybody's like, "Oh, my branch is better. Like we're tougher," that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. If I would have assumed, it might be that your parents or the family in general would have pushed you to join the military because that's, so many of you did that. So there was the opposite.
Well, I think partly it was because I was a girl.
Mm.
And, my dad was like, we just really want you to get an education.
Okay.
So I think had I been a boy and had there been some interest, they probably would have been like, yeah, go. Like, because I think in families like mine, it's seen as sort of like an early step into manhood. Like,
Hmm.
if you want structure, if you want to learn a skill, and serve your country, that's a good way to do it. And on top of it, you do 4 years or whatever, and then you can pay for your schooling on top of it. And most of the guys, to be honest, they're not really ready to go to school anyway.
Yeah.
So then it at least gives them structure and a skill set so that later, if they're mature enough to go to school, like they might actually do something with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Of course, I'm speaking for people, right? This is
Sure.
just what I think they think.
Yeah. So then, so you ended up majoring in French. And what did you do once you finished university?
Well, so like I said, I wanted to go back to France.
Right.
So I went to France at Indiana State and did my college study abroad tour.
Mm-hmm.
I went for a year and I studied in Université de Franche-Comté in Besançon.
Okay.
So it was right next to the Swiss border. And I had the opportunity to meet a lot of really interesting kids and, the European version of our study abroad, which is Erasmus.
Mm-hmm.
So, for those people that are watching that know about Erasmus or went to school with me, like, hey.
That's a program?
Yeah. So,
okay.
The Europeans, they always do things a little differently than we do in the States.
Yeah.
And I think most of the kids that I went to school with in France that were part of Erasmus, their parents were encouraging that. They were either encouraging like a break year, leap year, for their kids to go, travel the world. And I think all of that was part of the thought of Erasmus. Like, yeah, go somewhere, learn something different. All the American kids that were coming into it, we were very wide-eyed, like, oh, wow, this is amazing. When the Europeans were like, oh, yeah, like this is just this thing that we do. Right, and some of them were even switching countries. Like one of my friends, she did 1 semester in France and 1 semester in the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, oh, wow, that's so amazing. And she's like, yeah, it's like no big deal. I just thought, like, why spend a whole year in one place whenever I can, split it into 2?
Yeah, fair enough. So you were doing that like while you were still at the university, or is this after postgrad?
This is university.
Okay.
So that when I wrapped up with university, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm stuck here now. And I was like, now what do I do? So you see the connection, right? Where I'm like, right, I just want to go. I want to see the world. And I need to put myself in places where I can do that. So then I was going to just go to grad school because I thought, I like the French language. Maybe I can teach somewhere else, or at the very least, I am enjoying the like collegiate type atmosphere.
Yeah.
So then my mom's like, listen, why don't you go and be a flight attendant rather than take on all the student debt, because then you can still see the world. Mm-hmm. So I was like, Mom, I'm too educated for that. And then I found out once I applied and became a flight attendant that flight attendants are actually very educated and often come from a different principled background. Like I was in the French base. I started off at Continental Airlines. And a lot of those French speakers were very educated, had very interesting backgrounds. And needless to say, I learned very quickly that my thought was inaccurate.
Interesting. Yeah, I've chatted with lots of flight attendants over the years, and they're multilingual. They've varied backgrounds, and I feel like the ultimate pull is adventure. Is that fair to say? Yeah, because you could take all that knowledge and training and education, and apply it to whatever, and probably some quote unquote steady, stable 9-to-5 type job. Mm-hmm. But we want adventure,
right?
So yeah, what did you learn? Did you realize pretty quickly that was something you wanted to stick with for at least a little while once you got into it?
Well, I did it for 17 years.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I
Did you
think
think you would do it that long?
I wasn't sure.
Hmm.
I wasn't sure. I think I was always just viewing life as a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is cool. I'm around some cool people. I enjoyed the conversations. I very much enjoyed that it was very diverse.
Hmm.
I was a Newark based flight attendant. So, in the Continental Airlines portion of things with the three main bases we had, the Newark base was a little bit like the redheaded stepchildren of all the
Okay.
bases, which I actually loved that. I think
Huh.
I was always like a little bit of a rebel rouser.
I see.
And, I very much enjoyed that a lot of my crewmates were ex-military men, women, different races, spoke different languages, came from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
On any given flight in the Newark base, you could have, 5 or 6 different flight attendants in the back, you know, different colors, different languages. And
Hmm.
I just very much enjoyed that.
Yeah, neat. Hmm. So were you kind of mostly back and forth to France, or did you really fly all around the world?
Well, I mean, as a French speaker, I primarily was doing Paris, Geneva, and Brussels.
Hmm.
And I would say I did Paris and Brussels more than Geneva. Geneva was a little bit more the more senior of the three.
Yeah.
And I was young and I preferred the nightlife in Paris and Brussels. And
Sure.
I very much took advantage of that. I loved
All
it.
right. Good.
I mean, that's why I was flying. I was like, I
Yeah.
need to be able to get myself to the places.
Yeah. 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 Interesting. It's quite the life, isn't it? Did you find it exhausting, like the schedule and just the being on call? Like, how does it work actually? Like, do you know your schedule? Maybe it's changed, of course, over the years, but did you know your schedule at the time and could you plan, or is it very kind of last minute type? Oh, tomorrow you're going here. Kind of
Well,
thing?
it depends on if you're a reserve flight attendant or if you're mainline, like
Okay.
have a set schedule. And there is also mainline, and then there are the regional carriers too that all kind of feed into a larger spoke.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're lucky enough to get a line, then you would bid on your line the month before. Then they assign you a line. Then you have a period of time where you can trade your trips and things like that. And then throughout the month, you could trade trips. Now, I haven't been doing it for a while, so I'm sure things have probably changed.
Right.
But also, things were different back then, and things are different at every airline for, the
Yeah.
rules that they have on, how their reserve system works and how their trading works. But I think at Continental, I had a pretty good introductory into the like flight attendant world.
Okay.
I really enjoyed my experience at Continental.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So how long were you with them?
Well, there was a merger,
Oh, yeah.
and so I was with them for a couple years, and then that transitioned to United later.
Hmm.
And so I think I was probably, I want to say that merger was 2010,
Hmm.
but we didn't completely merge because we were all flying separately for a period of time. So I think the pilots were as well. The
Yeah.
Continental, like pilots and flight attendants were still flying separately, but it was a few years later, probably 4 or 5 years later.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, I finished out the rest of my career at United Airlines.
Right. So when you're working this kind of job, like, do you have much time really to kind of do much else, to do other interest or maybe community stuff or anything, or is it really just go 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 all the time? And because it sounds to me, this is just my outside impression, but like you kind of, it's an all-consuming job. That's the impression, is that you're either working or you're waiting to be called into work, and it's all hours of the day, and hardly any sleep and all this kind of stuff. So were you able, maybe that's true or not, but were you able to still pursue other interests and hobbies and things like that during all those years?
Not really. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but yeah, your schedule pretty much does determine your life.
Yeah.
And I think once you get into that swing, it's really easy to be thinking ahead to like, right, I'm going to make my plans for the next month. I know I'm probably not going to make the holidays and stuff because most flight attendants were probably working on the holidays, like through all the major things, because you never really knew for sure what your schedule was going to be like, especially if you were reserve. And being on reserve can be really tough. I know that also shifted throughout the years, but when you're on reserve, you're living in a crash pad in a city, which basically means that, it's either like a bunk bed situation or in a hotel with a bunch of other people. And you're like hot bedding it most of the time, which basically means, which actually kind of reminds me of what my cousins and stuff used to say about the military.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I think that's why there's a lot of military people that come over.
That's like in submarines and stuff. Like there's always somebody in the bed, right? In the cot.
Yeah.
Cruise ships are like that. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So, when you come in and then you kind of put your stuff wherever everybody puts their stuff. And, if there's a cot, a bunk bed available or whatever, you just kind of see whichever one's available unless they are assigned to you in advance. Okay. And then you probably have your own sheets unless they happen to have a crash pad in a hotel that they may make an agreement with the staff there that, they'll have the hotel staff come in and change sheets every once in a while. But you have to coordinate because someone's always sleeping.
Right.
So, you have some people that work the red eye shift. So you have like your red eye turn people that they're probably sleeping during the day because they're going to start their day about anywhere from 4 to 6 o'clock at night. And then they're going to fly all night long. The international people, they're kind of like that too. But definitely the turn people. So you have your day turn people and your night turn people. And they generally never run into one another because when you're building out your schedule, especially for commuting purposes, most of these people live somewhere else, right?
Right.
So let's say you're based in San Francisco, but you live in Texas. You're going to fly in the day of or the morning of, do your flight. You might go to your crash pad before, you might not. Then you're going to go in between your flights. And if you don't have time to do that, you may just go downstairs to the sleep room, which a lot of airlines have that sort of thing, which is essentially they just have a bunch of chairs around. Maybe they have some chairs with like the recliner part. Maybe they don't. You're just pushing chairs together. You're sleeping in your uniform normally. Just throw a blanket over yourself or your coat over yourself. You sleep for however long you can. And then you like go to the bathroom downstairs, splash some water on your face, and you're right back at it.
Jeez. Wow. Did you have to do that a lot?
Well, yeah. I mean, some people have it nicer than that, right? But I'm just saying, like, I'm just being real with you.
Yeah, no.
So, this is why they don't allow flight attendants to participate in things like the Amazing Race, because they'd win every time.
Yeah. They used to operating on like 2 hours sleep.
Well, yeah, because these are the people that are, they're always trying to be really crafty about, they're like little MacGyvers, right? You're using like the stir sticks instead of chopsticks because you forgot fork. Right, and you're like, right, I still want to eat this. So I have to figure out a way to eat it. That's not with my hands.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Yeah. Like the behind the scenes stuff, right? Which, and of course we'll frame it, for our audience, for the multi-potentialites, like to do something that just seems so all consuming, as fun and adventurous as it is. Did you get to a point where like you'd kind of had enough of that lifestyle?
I think generally with flight attendants, sometimes something needs to happen in your life because you get in the like spin of things. Like being a flight attendant also becomes who you are.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily see it happening, but it does happen. Because you've had to transform your entire life. So now your family, they already know. You're always going to say, hey, like, don't make special plans around the holidays or whatever that you expect me to be there for, because I can't guarantee that I'll be there.
Right.
So you're always kind of like a ghost floating in and out of your life. And I would imagine that has gotten worse for people. It seems like the schedules are getting more demanding and the companies are becoming more inflexible. And that's why everybody becomes a flight attendant, right? Like they want it to be flexible. So when it becomes a problem to either trade trips.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like, people are willing to make those kind of sacrifices as long as it works for
good
them.
point. Yeah.
But when it stops working for them, then they have to reevaluate. So I had anticipated being a flight attendant until I was going to retire. And then I ended up with 3 kids with autism.
Yes, so we'll transition to that.
Yeah.
I do want to ask one last thing, if I can.
Mhm.
You don't have to give me any numbers, but are flight attendants paid, let's say, appropriately?
I think that depends on who you ask.
Sure.
When I started, I was making $18 an hour. Now
Okay.
that may sound great on paper, right? But
Kind of.
right. Now, mind you, this was 2006.
Yeah.
They make more money now when they start, but just to put this in perspective for people. So that is from when they release the brakes on the aircraft.
Oh, that whole thing. Yeah.
Yes. To actually push back to get ready to fly. So that means the entire time that you were in the airport, that means the time that you commuted to get to the place.
Yeah.
All of that doesn't count.
And even when you're checking the boarding passes, right? And all that stuff, the boarding procedure, you're not paid for that.
So technically, no. Now, like I said, every airline is different. So I'm not going to quote for every airline.
I've heard that a lot. I think a lot of them do that, yeah.
But at the airlines that I worked for, that's how it was. And that also meant that, you know, if you ever had to divert or something like that, you know, it got questionable. If you were scheduled to depart from somewhere, especially if it was internationally, let's say you show up to the airport and they didn't let you guys know that they had a mechanical.
Okay.
And like that plane's not going anywhere, right? So like you might have to take the entire crew and take them back to the hotel. Like all that stuff you're not getting paid for. So even though they have increased the like baseline for what they're paying flight attendants now, with the increasing lack in flexibility, I think I'm gonna pull a grandpa. Like I had a lot of respect for my grandpa here.
Okay.
And he would have told me, right, if he had that information now, he would have been telling his friend, like if he was in those realms, he would have been telling his friends, maybe it's time to look for something else. And he definitely would have been telling his friends with kids, sort of like the military people that I know now. They're also doing this. Now it's not a good time. It's not a good time for that. Because if you're going to sacrifice your entire life for a company and sort of the agreement has changed.
Right.
Like
it's a social contract in essence.
Yeah. Maybe you should reconsider.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So was there a point where, I mean, you wanted to have children? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I always wanted to have kids. And I was trying to be responsible. I was like, right, I got to make sure that I have enough money, all that stuff. Like make sure that I'm stable, make sure that I have a job, make sure that I have a house, like all the things that they tell you. And because I wasn't going to do it the conventional way, that, I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community, and I just wasn't down for that. Like, I'm not shaming anybody that does it, but I was like, I can't do that. Right. So that meant that I had to go purchase sperm from a sperm bank, which meant that I essentially had to get, pick frozen pop from a catalog, essentially. I know I'm being funny about it on purpose, but because it's sort of comical. It's like looking through the Sears catalog and you're like, right, here are all these options. And
we can get into this.
Let's talk about it
for sure. Because is it really kind of like that? Do they tell you the background of the people, the men who've donated, right, and that kind of stuff? Like, do you get that much info, or is it just totally random?
Listen, I can tell you with 100% certainty, you would know more about these donors than you would probably know about your husband, unless he's a very open and vulnerable man.
Right.
Okay. It's the important stuff, right? It's like, do you have any significant genetic diseases or anything like that. They screen for them. You get all the medical information up to like the grandparents on both sides. You get hair color, eye color, sometimes of, other family members. You don't get the name or anything. You can generally get a profile and baby pictures, maybe even adult pictures. You can decide what level of participation you would like this donor to have. Some have open donorship status where, you could contact them to some degree if they wanted to be a part of this thing. You have non-disclosure. And like I said, you have different sperm banks as well. So this is a whole thing.
Yeah.
But the sperm bank that I purchased sperm from, it was either open. Non-disclosure was if your children wanted to find out who the sperm donor was after they're 18, they can write to the sperm donor bank and ask, and then they can reach out to that person and see if they're interested.
Wow.
And then I think your third option was it was anonymous. They didn't want any sort of contact. And so
what did you base your decisions on?
Well, I was trying to think about it. I'm like, you know what? Obviously, I'm going to be the one raising this kid, but kids are curious. And I always liked genealogy. And I'm like, I don't want to take that from my kid. If my child, when they're 18, they'll be an adult. And if they want to find out who this, other 50% of their DNA is, why not? I don't want to take that from them. And especially if, you never know, people may develop some sort of disorder in the future. And let's say, knock on wood, right? If any of my children had anything like that, then that would be another way for them to find out. So I ended up picking the non-disclosure option. So when they're 18, if they wish to reach out to this person and that person says yes, then that will be an option for them.
Wow. I really had no idea how all this works. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And you get a thumb drive afterwards too. So let's say that you are successful, right?
Yeah.
It sounds it sounds funny talking about it like this, but it is like this. You have to, when you're ovulating, you go to your doctor and then they're like, right, we've got a window to work with here. Send the sperm. So then you contact the sperm bank. They send a cryogenically frozen sample in a tube to the doctor's office that they defrost, and then they do your procedure.
Yeah.
If that takes, and then you're pregnant, then you contact the sperm bank and let them know, hey, it worked.
Wow.
And then once you have a successful completion of your pregnancy and have a live birth from it, then you report that back to the sperm bank as well. So I had 3 live births from the same donor. So then I reported that back to the sperm bank. So they have that information. Yeah. And then they put that in their logs. So let's say, I don't know if my donor is still available. All of them have a number, right? But let's say somebody also is looking for a certain type of donor.
Sure.
They can also see that. They can see how many live births this donor had.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's
good
information
how viable
too.
they are.
Sure. Yeah. And did you purposely choose the same donor for, each time? Because in the end, your second pregnancy, of course, was twins. So technically you did it twice.
Right.
But did you intentionally choose the same donor, or were you maybe forced to do? Once you choose one, you have to choose them again?
Oh, no, you can pick as many as you want, but it's more cost effective. Think of it like Sam's Club, right? So the more, I know it's funny, right? But the more sperm you buy, the more bang for your buck. And you also can, they give you a free storage plan, but you just have to use it in a specified amount of time. So in essence, to get the most bang for your buck, you should be using it as quickly as you can, because then you're going to have to pay for the storage, which is a fairly decent price.
Yeah.
And so I can't remember how many bottles I got,
Hmm.
but 4 or 5. I had started out with a different donor, and then I
Right.
switched donors, so then they were able to exchange those vials. It's very transactional,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I could go onto my account, I could check out, see how many vials I had left, and once I realized I'm not going to have any more kids,
Right.
I tried to I contacted the sperm bank and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm done. I don't want to have any more kids. I have a couple vials left. So for all of the people that maybe could benefit, that maybe have had to do more cycles, especially the IVF people and all that. Plus, all the vials are marked differently, so you have to purchase them that way. You can have IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, which
Mm-hmm.
is basically they thread that up into your uterus, or you have to purchase the type of sperm that they have to do IVF with. So
Okay.
there are different types.
Huh. How do you? Is it a medically that they determine which one you need?
Yeah, so I didn't do IVF. I don't know what their standard is for determining like at what point you need to do IVF.
Hmm.
I would imagine they probably try IUI if they can because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's say you come to a point where, and mind you, I'm not a medical doctor, right? This is
Right.
just from going through the experience. I would assume at some point, if you're not successful with IUI, then at some point they'll be like, right, we need to try IVF. And then you would need to go back and buy different vials, which would
Mm.
potentially mean you would change donors if they
Oh,
didn't
I
have that
see.
available for you.
Huh. Interesting. So, I mean, the whole process, as you say, is very like transactional and stuff. Do
Mm-hmm.
you, in your experience, do you find maybe it's better or easier to remove as much of the emotion of it as possible and just kind of approach it as a transactional thing? You know?
I mean, but see, I'm a different character, right? Like there are some people that would be like, I don't ever want, especially for married couples, right? Like,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
they technically would have a mom and a dad. Even, lesbian or gay couples, they would have their two parents.
Sure.
So they might be more inclined to be like, look, I really don't want to know this person. Like, I don't want to come up against any sort of like competition with parenting roles in the future or something weird.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I don't have another person and I feel like very confident in myself. And I know that person can't be their mother anyway. So I think I'm a little bit more like a dude that way. And I would be more like high fiving him and be like, hey, good job, buddy. Thank you. Like we
I
can
can
be
picture
friends and
that.
drink a beer, right? That sort of
Yeah,
thing. If
that's
he's
cool.
cool.
Yeah. So we'll kind of bring it to, I guess, present day. I mean, a lot of people know this, and it is the focus of your podcast. It's about autism advocacy in
Yep.
America, and so both of your kids, both your twins, and then the oldest, they all have been diagnosed with autism.
Right.
I will just say, I mean, we can get into a bit of it for sure, but part of the backstory to you and I is that we did a little mini series about a year ago, which is on your
Right.
YouTube channel. Put the links in, which does tell a lot of that story. So, I mean, if people want to get into more of that, I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's about an hour long. So at least for here, because I want to talk a bit about that, and then just your podcast and the things that you're up to as well, and
Mm-hmm.
get to the call to action and stuff. But I mean, let's kind of bring it to, well, how did the transition from, you know, being a flight attendant and just kind of on your own and like doing your own thing, and now you've got, of course, 3 young kids to look after, and then they get this diagnosis. Like, what was it like to go through all that?
Well, I will say that I still have a money making job.
Yeah.
So after being a flight attendant, I became a city postal carrier.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was juggling a full-time job, a new job. I think I'd only been at my job maybe a year. And then I'm having to deal with all these medical appointments.
Right.
And it was exhausting. And I didn't know what I was doing. I don't think anybody really does.
No.
You're basically thrown this information and it's sort of
Yeah.
like, right, like, here's your letter, figure it out.
Jeez.
And luckily for me, The doctor that I was originally assigned to when Kai was born, we ended up going back to her, and she was the one that actually did his autism diagnosis and the twins as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think sometimes the universe puts people in your path for a reason, and her staff have been a godsend.
Mm.
Like, I wouldn't know what I was doing, and I wouldn't have been able to figure it out if it wasn't for those people.
Yeah.
And just along the way, and trying to find services for my children, because just because they had autism didn't mean that they shouldn't be able to participate in all the other things that kids get to do.
That's right.
So yeah, that's how we get into the nonprofits and stuff. And
well, tell us about the podcast and what motivated you to start that, and what you want to achieve from it too.
I see Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America as a group project.
Yeah.
Like we have a team, we have a behind the scenes. There were other people that were very instrumental as like mentors in the autism community that were helping me build this and helping introduce me to people for the guests and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So this is really a community project, if you will, to increase advocacy awareness and give people a platform to talk about all the things, like life is hard and like, why not?
Yep. And one of the things I've really come to love about your podcast, we started it in May of this year, 25. You've been incredibly persistent and committed to it, like episodes every week. But the thing I've really come to appreciate is the length and giving people the time and space to have good conversation, to really deeper into topics. And for a lot of your guests, they say this on the show often. It's like they're surprised and happy that they've had that time and that chance. They're not cut off by, in 20 minutes or even 40 minutes. Like, you often go for a good hour and a half kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it really gives the guests, as much as anything, the chance to really like finally share their story or, things they really want to like get off their chest or whatever it is. Right. And it's nice to have that kind of permission to do so. Of course, they're longer episodes, but, people are there for that information, and the people who need it, they really need it. It's as much about the information as the connection, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you were actually the one that suggested this in the title, like conversation with. Yeah. And I think initially I saw it as more of an interview, but it did turn into more of a conversation.
Yep.
And I do say along the way, I tell everybody after we're done wrapping up the episode, I say, look, most of the guests end up becoming my friends and allies. And I mean it. I'm there for them. I want to increase advocacy if there's anything that they need from me, either individually with their community, if they're doing any sort of like outreach or program within their company. Like, mm-hmm. I want them to call me because I think that, that's the only way that we're really going to make a change. And this podcast is about change. It's about action.
That really comes across when you watch it, when you listen to it. I mean, the conversations are great, but there's an outcome that, you're looking for here, even starting just with taking action, right? I mean, if there's anyone kind of the first step as far as taking action, especially to the viewers of your show, is there where would you tell people to start? Because the whole point is we're trying to change policy and change attitudes, and maybe that means getting different people in position of power for sure. But it's also societal attitudes and stuff. So it can be quite overwhelming. Obviously, as a result, it's a big project. We're not going to solve it overnight, but at least we start. Where do you tell people to start?
Just do something, anything. If you have an idea and you want to start something and you think it's ridiculous, just bounce that idea off somebody else. It may not be your family or, people you work with.
Yeah.
But there are people out there that are willing to be your mentor and believe in these type of things. And I do think that this podcast is sort of shaping a movement, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's a team. Like, all this stuff is a team sport. We're not just going to change this stuff overnight. And there need to be thousands of us. So if I can help, like if this podcast can help anybody or help shape an idea, or if maybe I interview someone that somebody's interested in, they think, oh, hey, like they might be able to help me or be a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
email me.
Yeah.
Like I'm on my phone all the time. Like
Yeah.
I often talk about myself like this. I'm like the eye of the hurricane. And as people come into my orbit, I pull them in and I spit them out and connect them with somebody else.
Yeah.
Because
You're very good at that.
yeah, it's like, but I think that's part of my autism too, right? Like I genuinely want to help people.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be doing any of this if I didn't see the need for it, right? Like we're right now at a time in the States where for whatever reason, it seems like we're going backward, and we're having conversations about taking rights from people, especially in the disability community. So there are a lot of people that can't speak for themselves. And yeah, I guess like it could have been anybody. It didn't have to be me, right? But I am
I
now
think you're
in
the
a
right person for it.
I'm now in a position where, I can thump that drum, if you will, and I'm happy to thump it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And there's a level, a measure of joy, I think, in the work you're doing that is difficult, and in a way almost it's unfortunate that we have to do this, that we're in this position, right? But
Right.
I feel that there's a joy that you're having in trying to make a difference and connecting people and talking about these issues, right? And making the most of the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great.
Well, like we were talking earlier, like I need a doppelganger. Like I'm getting to the point where like
Yeah.
I need some help, and thank God for my team, because like that's why I say this is a team sport. We're all working together. If we can encourage more people or train more people to do this sort of thing, the more the merrier. Like just keep slamming your body against that wall, if you will, and eventually that wall is going to come down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And tell us how the podcast then is connected to the nonprofit and that effort in general.
Right. So, Color the Experience is a nonprofit that started with a music festival, pretty exclusively started with the autism community, because there wasn't really anything like that in my area for kids with autism.
Right.
And I'm from a very musical family. I've got a brother that's a musician. I know a lot of musicians. And I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had this like outdoor European style music festival?
Yeah.
And literally, my brother and we were talking about it on my porch. Like, that's how this idea got started. We start texting people and throwing this thing together. And,
Yeah. And that was
think
last year, right? That was 24 was the first one.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
we just had our second festival.
Right.
And the really cool thing about this nonprofit is sort of like the podcast has been, you find out who your people are.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty much bankrolling all this myself. So I rely heavily on people that are volunteering their time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for everyone, but the people that are joining this, like they really believe in the movement. And that's why I said these things I'm doing, they're turning into movements. Like people see the necessity. And one thing that I pride myself on in the nonprofit is it's really inclusive. So, that's why I say it started out for neurodiversity and autism, but everybody's welcome. It's just a way for people to have a space where they can be themselves. And hopefully the community will join and they will see the necessity in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So I'm sure there'll be another one next summer.
I'll always do these.
Or something along those lines.
And, the funny thing about me is, being a doer, I'm always going to make it happen. Right. Even if that means that I can't find a park to do it in, I will like do it in my backyard. Like these are the type of things that once you start and once you see a need for it, you're going to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Cool. So how can people get in touch with you?
Well, right now we're working on the website. So that should be up soon, and we'll have links to, everything that I do. But basically for now, you just type in my name, Tabitha Ziegler. Last name is spelled Zeigler. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and then through me, you can probably see all the links to everything else, Color the Experience, Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. And I also have a travel business called Umbrella Adventures.
Right,
So
yeah.
you can find that there too.
Cool. Yeah. We don't have time for that.
I know. It's not a long enough show for all the multi-potentialite things.
I know. This is interesting. This is a good point to wrap up on, because it's like with any guest, you could easily talk for 2 or 3 hours, right? About all the things they're interested in, the things they've done in the past, the things they want to explore, and all the things they learned about it. And part of the fun is that there will be listeners who say, yeah, I wasn't so interested in those other things, but when you talked about organic gardening, that's my thing. I'd love to reach out to you about that. So I know that I have to kind of reel it in. It's always that balance with multi-potentialites, because it's like,
we got to wrap it up.
Yeah, you kind of have to pick one thing, at least briefly, to try to get something done. I know we resist that, but that doesn't mean you can't do the other things. It's really about each of us finding for ourselves how we manage that balance of time and commitment and maybe money and stuff like that, that we want to put into all the things that we want to do. So for me with podcasts, and I do want to make things accessible, again, it comes back. I do appreciate your show is longer, and that I think it's the right format for your show.
Mm-hmm.
For mine, it's like, this is a longer episode, and that's okay. But like generally, I kind of go 30-ish, 35 minutes, because I think that's a fair ask. That gives people, the listeners can, get to know the guest and the things they're interested in, figure out how to make the contact, and it kind of gets the gears turning, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, we could talk for 2 hours, but I respectful people's time too. So it's just getting the messages out there and introducing people to the audiences. So, and in your case, again, and I know a lot of people know you, but now we know a lot more about you and some of that backstory, a lot of stuff I didn't know about. So this has been really neat.
Well, I'm full of little gems there, but maybe I can come back. I'm always happy to come back and chat with you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. We'll keep that in mind. I'm excited for the next year and to see where all this goes. And as I say, you're a doer. It's exciting to see.
Well, like I said, I couldn't do it without you, Ted.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be a part of it. So thanks very much, everybody.
Right. Thank you. Bye, guys.
We are at a pivotal point in American history. We do not have the luxury to remain silent. Programs are disappearing every day. We hope that this podcast raises awareness and sparks a sense of advocacy in you. We all can make a difference. The important thing is to start. See you next time.